All right, so here's an introduction to absolute value inequalities. I don't know how much you actually know, so I'm just gonna send this video to you, and you tell me if you need it to be simplified more, you need like more instruction, or like kind of go from there. All right, so absolute value inequalities. Anytime we're dealing with absolute values, we always have two answers. One's gonna be a positive and one's gonna be a negative. That's just the way it goes. Now, in order for you to write these answers, you have to know that these symbols right here use these types of notation. So this is what we call a less than or greater than symbol, and we use these parentheses to show that it's not included. This just means that we're not going to include a number. Anytime we use the equal to symbol, less than or greater than or equal to, we're always going to use brackets to show that we're including it. I will say this, being able to read it, we'll see what I mean, is the most important thing, because the way we go about solving it is going to be the same way I set it up. I do it different than some other people, but so here's what I mean. So when we set it up, these symbols right here mean and these symbols right here mean or. This is a lot of things you have to remember, but again, once we set it up and we start solving, you don't actually have to remember this. You'll see, if you can read the inequality, you'll see what I mean in a minute, then it just does this naturally for you. It sets it up for and or. I know it's a lot to remember. But here's what I mean. When we draw the number line, if we're using these symbols, we're going to use a parentheses. If we're using these symbols, the equal to, we're going to use a bracket. And when we do my number line, and if it's connected, we only have one answer like that. If we do my number line, and once we do it, and if we have two answers on the opposite ends like this, we're going to have an answer and the union sign. I think you have some of these questions already correct on the previous attempt, so you might have an understanding, but here's the way that I think it's easiest to solve it. All right, so here's step number one. So here's this question right here. Absolute value of x plus 3 is less than or equal to 4. So step one, I say set it up. And here's what I mean. I would always just set it up where you take this original one, right? And because there's two answers, always a positive and negative. So I'm going to take this original one, which I have right here, and I'm going to make this a negative 4, which I put it right here. And then we keep this sign, the opening up the same way that it's opening up. So, right, it's going like that, bam, bam. All right, so that was step one. So this is why I have that. Always set it up like this. You'll see, we'll get practice in a minute. So next, what we do is we just solve for x. I basically want to get x by itself, so we always do the opposite operations of what's happening. So if this is x plus 3, we know the opposite of adding 3 is going to be minus 3, so I'll do minus 3, but because I have things on both sides, I need to minus 3 on both sides. So I'll do a minus 3 here, and you do a minus 3 here. And then you just solve. So what is a negative 4 minus 3? That's going to be a negative 7. And then what is 4 minus 3? And that's going to be 1. All right. So then that's how I got negative 7 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 1. All right. So here's what I mean right here. Let me erase this real quick, so we'll go over all of this in a minute. Sorry. All right. Here's what I mean by reading this. All right, so this is actually two different statements. There's one with that and there's one with that. So you have to be able to read it, and then that helps you come up with the shading on the line. So if you're looking at this, it says all my x values, from looking at this part, are greater than or equal to negative 7. So if here is negative 7 on my number line, would I want to shade this way? Which way would be greater than negative 7, or would I want to shade this direction here? And that's the reason why I have this purple line, because I'm going to shade this direction. So I shaded just to the right of that. And if you read this part right here, it says all my x values less than or equal to 1. So if you're looking at here's 1, do I want to shade on this side or this side? If my x values are less than 1, you want to shade here. Now, since these two lines connect right here, this is where it's just one answer. And how do we do that? We take the farthest number on the left, which is negative 7, comma, the farthest number on the right. And then we got to figure out which inequality symbol do we use. We use these here. So I use a bracket, and that's your answer. All right, so let's get some more examples real quick. Let me see real quick.